Welcome to the Friday edition of Reporter's Notebook. My name is Jay Rosen. I'm the co-founder of Cultivated Media. I'm the host of this program and our programs Monday through Thursday, which is called Cultivated Live. On Fridays, we are joined by our friends and partners at MJBiZDaily. Today, I don't know if you pulled the long straw or the short straw, Chris, but you're the guest today.
They're all the same straw. It's really weird.
That's the thing.
It's not like it's
They're all
rigged or
the same straw, but you picked a good week.
Straws all the way down. Absolutely, Jay. Thanks for having me as always.
It's a pleasure. It's nice to see you today. It was a big, I think almost every week is a big cannabis news week.
Absolutely.
But not every news week related to cannabis involves the presidential race. We've had a couple of those over the past, I would say, month or more. But this week, you're going to correct me if I'm wrong, I think we had the strongest pro-legalization message from any candidate maybe in the history of cannabis, with Kamala Harris coming out in a number of formats talking about legalization on the national level. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And like you pointed out, it was a short week, holiday week here in the U.S. Not sure about Canada.
Yeah, we had Thanksgiving on Monday.
Oh, so you gave thanks while we alternatively celebrated or really anti-celebrated Christopher Columbus. So we'll put that one on the shelf for now. But yeah, so on Columbus Day, on the Monday holiday, let's call it that, on the mid-October Monday holiday, Kamala Harris's campaign released an economic opportunity agenda specifically aimed at Black men, but there was some stuff in there for everybody. The fifth of 5 points was a promise to make legal, safe cannabis the law of the land. And she followed that up the following day with an appearance on Breakfast Club host Charlemagne the God's. He did a sort of town hall. And legalization came up within the first 5 minutes of that hour-long talk. And again, she mentioned her administration's success on rescheduling. And then, didn't offer any concrete specifics, didn't say exactly how this was going to happen. And sort of left unsaid the fact that a lot of this is going to hinge on Congress unless there's some executive powers that yet to exercise that we don't know about yet. But this is absolutely the Democratic Party finally coming around and saying, legalization nationwide, that's something we want to get done when and if we win the White House.
It's a big deal. That seems like a big deal. And I'll put it in context in that former President Trump has also come out on some cannabis issues. He is for Amendment 3 in Florida.
That's right.
Came out for banking reform, some other reforms at the federal level. But, and I will say this as a lifelong Democrat, but also I worked on the Hill. If people look at me on LinkedIn, it's not going to be a surprise. He also, very few or zero Republicans have sort of followed that lead or come out and said, now my position has changed in the U.S. Senate. Now I will support X, Y, and Z. So it's not really bringing the party along on the Republican side, whereas the Democratic leader of the party, in this case, Kamala Harris, her party is behind this, I would imagine, maybe not 100%, but way more in front of it than the Republican Party. So this appears to be good news. And I think while it seems like an incremental step, it does seem like a big step to have the presidential candidate talking like this.
Yeah, it has to be. It's a big step from where things were 4 years ago. It's a big evolution from the Biden-Harris campaign position in 2020, like we just said. This is the first election cycle ever where both major party candidates have in some way, like you pointed out, Jay, said that, drug war bad, legalization good, cannabis reform good. This is also the Democrats doing a little bit more than Trump, which was maybe hard not to do more when all he really did do was do what he does best and post. It's just the post on Truth Social saying what he was going to do, and it didn't really appear anywhere else in campaign literature or messaging. The following day was the first and only debate, and that wasn't mentioned once. And again, I think that it is it's major by if you're looking at the long enough cycle, or if you're looking at long enough chronology. But I don't think it's going to make a lot of people in the industry happy. As usual, I think this is defensible because they have been waiting a long time for not a lot of progress. And, I think that they've been sort of not fooled, but maybe they've been, I think, sort of the victims of, high expectations. They've been expecting a lot out of Congress. They've been hearing a lot about it from leaders like Chuck Schumer, and not a lot has happened. And so I think that this isn't going to necessarily satisfy a lot of people. It's not really going to make any material changes to anyone's business right away, anyway. But yeah, at least in terms of rhetoric, it is absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's more, and it's more than ever before.
Expecting a lot out of Congress is a bad idea generally, no
I
matter
wouldn't do
what
it.
industry you're in.
That's right.
Except I guess if you're oil, gas, or guns, those things they
Yeah.
actually take action on for a fair amount of time or do nothing to do that. But I will say one thing that I also want to get your sense on. Um, former President Trump is now featured in Yes on Amendment 3 ads in Florida. I was down there last weekend, and I wonder if you think that moves the needle enough to go from like the 58, 59, where it seems to be polling, to like the 60% plus one vote to get it over the finish line. Or is this just an interesting way to appeal to Republicans in Florida? Or I guess stick it in the eye of Governor DeSantis, or both?
I mean, I'm really torn. I think all those theories are sound. Like, I'm really torn on this because, yeah, there are some libertarian. There are some more. There are a lot of like more libertarian type minded, conservative minded voters in Florida. Florida is also where Matt Gaetz is a member of Congress, and it is kind of like an ironic thing that it's the most right wing. Some of the most right wing members of Congress happen to be the most vocal legalization supporters as well. I mean, he is up in Tallahassee. I think it's the same district, or it's adjacent to where Florida-based multi-state operator TrueLive is headquartered, and obviously it's TrueLive's money that is the main driver behind Amendment 3 in Florida. But the weird thing is that, yeah, like the Republican establishment, this is actually one of the rare instances where you have a Republican establishment going against what Donald Trump is asking for. Like you pointed out, the governor there, Ron DeSantis, that Trump made pretty short work of in the primary, he's against legalization there. So is the official Republican Party, the main branch of the Republican Party there. The Youth Party seems to be split on it. The Young Republicans did an endorsement, but then almost immediately thereafter, there was a bunch of public allegations that it was a paid operative from the Amendment 3 campaign that made if anyone's ever sit in on like an endorsement meeting, I think you kind of know what I'm talking about. For those of you who haven't, don't.
God bless you, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't put yourself through it. Whatever you were doing that day is time better spent. Jay and I were talking about our favorite TV shows earlier. But anyway, there's like some contention of how that endorsement happened. So there's even a split within like the youth wing of the Republican Party. So all that to say, if I'm going to be honest, I don't know what that's going to do at the polls. And yeah, if we're right at that 60, if we're right at that 58, 59% marker, the other thing, with all the normal caveats about polling and how accurate and always right they've been over the past couple of years. Yeah, if you're right at that margin of 60%, which is what you need to pass a constitutional amendment in Florida, it's too close to call. And I think anyone really wagering, betting the farm on it, is engaging in some high risk behavior. I think it'll be close.
It's interesting, and I don't know if you saw this, but at the same speaking about wagering high risk, like obviously TrueLive is playing not a game. They are investing heavily in the legalization measure, Amendment 3. Others are as well. Certainly, it's over $100 million campaign. Most of that from the major companies down there.
Right.
But at the same time, the campaign, they're getting dinged for being large operators in Florida. And at the same time, earlier this week, we saw, I think, TrueLive added their 152nd and 153rd location in Florida. Planet 13 added their 28th. So I think we wrote in the newsletter that they're building a moat bigger and wider and deeper, even if legalization doesn't pass. So there are operators down in Florida that are obviously doing well, but also planning for the eventuality that this either does or doesn't pass, and they'll still be around November 6th, no matter what happens November 5th.
Right. I mean, obviously, though, I think that there's a reason why you'd spend that amount of money now is to make more money later. I don't think a lot of these companies are making long-term forecasts with there being no adult use legalization. I think that it is, I don't want to say it's like an all or nothing strategy, But I definitely think that they made a calculus that, yeah, we really have to risk heavily on this, because if we don't, then, the big returns, the big projections are going to be that many more years in the future. I definitely think that it is safer than waiting on Congress to do something, and probably safer than waiting on the Florida legislature. This is something that we've covered as well, but there are a lot of other companies that have put in applications to operate in Florida, I think now like a year and a half ago, and they're still waiting to hear back if their application even needs curing, let alone whether or not the state is going to offer them the opportunity first, because it is a limited license scheme, which is something big companies like. Small businesses tend to dislike it.
It's also a vertical license. Like, it's hard to get
Yeah,
off.
exactly. Yeah. And it's also one where you have to have a lot of investment up front. You have to have your real estate secured. You have to have all your ducks in a row. You have to pay the 6-figure application fee in addition to all the whatever you needed to secure the real estate. So yeah, it's a significant investment. Not everyone is able to participate. In Florida, unlike some other states, doesn't have any social equity provisions either, which I guess, just to tie it back to what Kamala Harris was saying, she did lay out as well a vision of legalization that does have social equity provisions. It's similar to what she was sponsoring the MORE Act as a senator. And in stark contrast, Florida doesn't have anything like that. And this has been contentious as well. Florida also lacks a home grow provision in their legalization measure. But I think that, these are some things that annoy, the real nerdy activists. But broadly speaking, the marijuana movement, the legalization movement, and the cannabis industry, all that being said, are obviously very in favor of Amendment 3 passing. I mean, as they should. Other than Texas, Florida is the last big U.S. state of any political affiliation. And Florida is obviously, I think, amongst the reddest states to consider this now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I just want to project a little ahead of, let's say it fails, but it fails in the high 50%, which I don't hope happens. I hope it passes. All that being said, I do think it'll be an interesting bellwether, because I think Trump's going to win that state by 5, 6, 7 points. Like, there's going to be this big gap between how much Trump wins on the Republican side for the presidential race and 10 points difference or 15 points difference that cannabis on the other side. Like, there's going to be this interesting conversation about where Republicans especially stand on legalization, given that. The other conversation, which I think I had with your colleague Omar, is that there is an important Senate race in Florida, which is much tighter than the presidential race in Florida, where a Democrat is not poised to win, a couple points down, but within the margin of error. And that'll be an important seat, depending on how the other seats go around the country. In the Senate, a pro-reform Democrat is running against a prohibitionist Republican, Rick Scott. So it is interesting what's happening in Florida on several levels, both on the national stage, but also as it relates to cannabis as well. And November 6th will be a hell of a day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that, and then just looking at sort of like the big picture here, a lot of the dynamics that have been keeping reform bottled up in the Senate are probably still going to be there. You still need 60 votes to beat the cloture, to end debate, to beat the filibuster, and to beat the cloture rule. And if you look across the country, it seems like for every Rick Scott, there's like a John Tester in Montana whose seat is at risk. You don't need to be a Democrat to support things like banking reform. Steve Daines, also from the Prairie area, he's a Trumpy Republican guy, but is in favor of safe banking. But again, you still need 60 votes, and it's going to be close no matter what. And command of the House is important too, because under Mike Johnson, we haven't had any of these cannabis reform bills that have passed Democratic-controlled houses in the past even come up for a vote. So, yeah.
It's a lot. There's a lot going on, which is why we like to connect with you and your colleagues on Fridays, because things move fast, and we're heading, right into the election, less than 3 weeks away. And we'll have you on, I don't know if immediately after, but certainly in the weeks following, to get the unpack how it's going. But Chris, I appreciate you joining us here on Friday on Reporter's Notebook, because we want the industry to know what's going on heading into the election, but all the time. So thanks for making time.
All right, Jay. Thanks for having me.
You got it.